Stop waiting for permission. Your time is now. There's a prison that holds more people captive than any walls or bars ever could. It's invisible yet unbreakable for those who don't recognize its existence. It's the prison of permission, the silent cage built from other people's opinions, society's expectations, and the devastating belief that you need approval to pursue what burns brightest in your soul. Every great fortune, every transformational business, every life-changing innovation began the moment someone stopped asking for permission and started taking action. They didn't wait for the perfect moment. They didn't seek approval from those who had never attempted what they were trying to achieve. They didn't postpone their dreams until conditions were ideal. They understood a fundamental truth that separates the extraordinary from the ordinary. Permission is not required to pursue greatness. Andrew Carnegie never asked permission to revolutionize the steel industry. He didn't request approval from the established steel barons who had been doing things the same way for generations. At the age of 33, while others were still asking what if, Carnegie was already building the empire that would make him the richest man in the world. He understood that waiting for permission was just another form of surrender, a sophisticated way of giving others control over your destiny. Henry Ford didn't seek approval from the carriage makers when he envisioned putting every American family behind the wheel of an automobile. The established wisdom said it was impossible, impractical, too expensive. But Ford wasn't interested in established wisdom. He was interested in establishing new realities. While his competitors were asking permission from tradition, Ford was busy making that tradition obsolete. His refusal to wait for approval didn't just create personal wealth. It transformed civilization itself. This is the secret that every self-made millionaire discovers. The world doesn't give you permission to succeed. It gives you permission to fail. Society is designed to keep you safe, comfortable, predictable. It's built to maintain the status quo, to preserve existing hierarchies, to ensure that change happens slowly and safely. But wealth creation isn't safe or slow or predictable. It's explosive, disruptive, transformational, and it requires you to stop seeking approval from a system that profits from your conformity. Thomas Edison faced this same choice when teachers told him he was too dumb to learn anything. He could have spent his life seeking their permission, proving his worth according to their standards, playing by their rules. Instead, he gave himself permission to think differently, to fail magnificently, to pursue ideas that seemed impossible to conventional minds. His refusal to wait for academic approval led to over 1,000 patents and innovations that literally illuminated the world. The permission trap is seductive because it feels responsible. It seems like wisdom to wait for the right moment, to seek approval from experts, to make sure everyone agrees with your vision before you pursue it. But this apparent wisdom is actually the enemy of transformation. While you're waiting for permission, opportunities are passing you by. While you're seeking approval, others are taking action. While you're trying to convince everyone else that your dream is valid, someone else is making that dream reality. Walt Disney understood this when every studio executive in Hollywood told him that audiences would never sit through a full-length animated film. They had data, experience, conventional wisdom on their side. Disney had something more powerful, the courage to stop asking for their permission and start creating what he knew was possible. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs didn't just prove the experts wrong. It created an entirely new industry and established Disney as one of the most influential entrepreneurs in history. The tragedy is that most people never realize they're waiting for permission. They disguise their fear as prudence, their inaction as preparation, their conformity as professionalism. They convince themselves they're being strategic when they're actually being paralyzed by the need for approval. They tell themselves they're waiting for the right time, when the truth is they're waiting for someone else to tell them it's the right time. But here's what every successful person learns. The right time is always now. Not because conditions are perfect, they never are. Not because risks have been eliminated, they can't be. But because every moment you postpone action is a moment you're choosing mediocrity over magnificence. Every day you wait for permission is a day you're handing control of your destiny to people who have never achieved what you want to achieve. Colonel Sanders was 65 years old when he decided to stop asking for permission and start building the empire that would become KFC. He didn't wait for restaurant industry experts to validate his recipe. He didn't seek approval from younger entrepreneurs who might have questioned his age. He didn't postpone his dreams until he had more capital or better connections. He gave himself permission to pursue greatness, and that self-authorization created one of the world's most recognizable brands. Ray Kroc was 52 when he encountered McDonald's and saw the potential to systematize their operation. He didn't ask the McDonald brothers for permission to revolutionize their industry. He didn't wait for franchise experts to approve his vision. He didn't seek validation from restaurant critics or business analysts. He saw what was possible and gave himself permission to make it happen. His refusal to wait for approval created the world's largest restaurant chain. This pattern repeats itself throughout history. Extraordinary success belongs to those who stop waiting for external validation and start creating internal authorization. They understand that permission seeking is just procrastination in disguise. They realize that asking for approval is often just another way of avoiding the risk and responsibility that comes with pursuing something meaningful. The permission trap is especially insidious because it can look like due diligence, market research, or prudent planning. There's a difference between gathering intelligence and seeking approval. Intelligence gathering is about understanding opportunities, obstacles, and optimal strategies. Permission seeking is about getting other people to validate your dreams before you're willing to pursue them. One leads to informed action, the other leads to informed inaction. Oprah Winfrey didn't ask television executives for permission to revolutionize daytime TV. They had already told her she was unfit for television news and too emotionally invested in her stories. Instead of seeking their approval, she gave herself permission to create a new kind of show, one that connected with people's hearts instead of just delivering information to their heads. Her willingness to ignore conventional wisdom and trust her own vision created a media empire worth billions. Sarah Blakely didn't wait for fashion industry approval when she cut the feet off her pantyhose and invented Spanx. She didn't seek validation from established undergarment manufacturers. She didn't postpone her launch until she had an MBA or industry experience. She gave herself permission to solve a problem she understood, and that self-authorization turned a simple idea into a billion-dollar company. The most expensive words in business and in life are "I need to think about it." Not because thinking is wrong, but because for most people, "I need to think about it" is code for "I need to find a way to avoid taking action." It's a sophisticated form of permission seeking disguised as prudent decision making. While you're thinking about it, others are doing it. While you're analyzing the risks, others are managing them. While you're waiting for certainty, others are creating success in the midst of uncertainty. This doesn't mean being reckless or impulsive. Every successful entrepreneur calculates risks, does their homework, prepares for challenges, but they do these things while moving forward, not as excuses to avoid moving forward. They give themselves permission to act with incomplete information, to learn as they go, to adjust their course based on real-world feedback rather than theoretical fears. Jeff Bezos exemplified this when he left his lucrative Wall Street job to start an online bookstore. He didn't have permission from the publishing industry. He didn't wait for approval from traditional retailers. He didn't postpone his launch until the internet was more mature or e-commerce was more proven. He gave himself permission to pursue what he called regret minimization, the strategy of taking actions he wouldn't regret when he was 80 years old, even if they seemed risky at 30. The permission-seeking mindset is often rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding about how success works. Most people think you need credentials before you can create value, experience before you can innovate, approval before you can lead. But the opposite is true. You create credentials by creating value, you gain experience by taking action, you earn the right to lead by demonstrating results. Permission isn't granted, it's taken. Richard Branson understood this when he started Virgin Records in his early 20s with no music industry experience. He didn't wait for record label executives to give him permission to compete with them. He didn't seek approval from established retailers before opening his mail-order business. He gave himself permission to learn by doing, to compete by serving customers better than established players, to innovate by questioning industry assumptions. His willingness to act without permission created a business empire spanning airlines, telecommunications, space travel, and dozens of other industries. The fear of acting without permission is really the fear of being responsible for outcomes. When you seek approval from others, you're essentially asking them to share responsibility for your decisions. If things go wrong, you can blame their advice. If you fail, you can point to their encouragement as evidence that it wasn't your fault. But this psychological safety comes at a devastating cost. It also means you can't take full credit when things go right. You can't feel the deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you created something through your own vision, courage, and persistence. Every millionaire has felt the terror of acting without permission. They've all faced the moment when they had to choose between the safety of conformity and the uncertainty of innovation. They've all wrestled with the fear that comes from taking full responsibility for their outcomes. But they've also experienced something that permission seekers never feel: the intoxicating rush of creating something from nothing, of turning vision into reality, of proving to themselves that they're capable of far more than they ever imagined. This is why self-authorization is the ultimate wealth-building skill. It's not just about making money, though it certainly leads to that. It's about developing the psychological muscle that allows you to act on opportunities while others are still debating whether those opportunities are real. It's about building the confidence that comes from knowing you don't need anyone else's approval to pursue what matters most to you. Mark Cuban felt this power when he started his first company, Micro Solutions, in his mid-20s, with no computer expertise and minimal capital. He didn't ask the technology industry for permission to enter their space. He didn't wait for approval from established software companies. He gave himself permission to learn technology by solving problems for small businesses, to compete by providing better service than established players, to succeed by focusing on results rather than credentials. His willingness to act without permission eventually led to multiple successful exits and billionaire status. The permission-seeking trap becomes even more dangerous when you're seeking approval from people who care about you. Family members, friends, and colleagues often discourage risk-taking because they genuinely want to protect you from potential failure. But their good intentions can become your greatest obstacles. They're advising you to stay safe in a world where safety is actually the riskiest strategy of all. They're encouraging you to preserve what you have in an economy that rewards those who create what never existed before. This is why successful entrepreneurs often seem to operate in isolation, especially in the early stages of building their empires. It's not because they're antisocial or arrogant, it's because they've learned that seeking approval from well-meaning but limited thinkers is a form of self-sabotage. They've discovered that the people who love you most are often the least qualified to advise you about pursuing extraordinary goals, because they've never pursued such goals themselves. Steve Jobs exemplified this when he returned to Apple and eliminated dozens of products to focus on a few revolutionary ones. He didn't seek approval from employees who were attached to their projects. He didn't wait for market research to confirm his vision. He didn't ask permission from industry analysts who thought Apple was finished. He gave himself permission to bet everything on his ability to create products that customers didn't even know they wanted yet. His refusal to wait for validation saved Apple from bankruptcy and turned it into the world's most valuable company. The most successful people in history share one common trait. They give themselves permission to act on incomplete information. They don't wait for perfect clarity because they understand that clarity comes through action, not through analysis. They don't postpone their dreams until risks are eliminated because they know that risk elimination is impossible and risk management is everything. They don't seek approval from others because they've learned to trust their own judgment, especially when that judgment contradicts conventional wisdom. This willingness to act without permission requires developing what could be called internal authority, the deep conviction that you have the right and the responsibility to pursue what calls to you most powerfully. Internal authority isn't arrogance or recklessness, it's the mature recognition that you're the only person qualified to make decisions about your own life. It's understanding that while others can offer advice, information, and perspective, only you can determine what risks are worth taking and what dreams are worth pursuing. Michael Dell developed this internal authority when he started Dell Computer from his university dorm room. He didn't ask permission from computer industry executives who had decades more experience. He didn't wait for approval from professors who thought he should focus on his studies. He didn't seek validation from established retailers who dominated computer sales. He gave himself permission to compete by eliminating the middleman and selling directly to customers. His willingness to trust his own judgment over industry wisdom created one of the world's largest technology companies. The transition from permission-seeking to self-authorization isn't easy or comfortable. It requires you to give up the psychological safety of shared responsibility. It demands that you trust your own judgment even when it conflicts with expert opinion. It forces you to act despite uncertainty, to lead without guaranteed followers, to innovate without proven models. But this discomfort is the price of transformation and the gateway to the kind of success that most people only dream about. Every day you spend waiting for permission is a day someone else is building the business you dreamed about, creating the product you envisioned, serving the customers you wanted to reach. While you're seeking approval, they're gaining market share. While you're building consensus, they're building empires. While you're trying to convince others that your vision is valid, they're making their vision reality. The digital age has made this dynamic even more pronounced. Technology has eliminated many of the barriers that once required institutional permission to overcome. You don't need a publisher's approval to reach readers. You can publish directly online. You don't need a record label's permission to distribute music. You can upload to streaming platforms immediately. You don't need a studio's approval to create video content. You can start a YouTube channel today. The tools of creation and distribution are available to anyone with the courage to use them. Yet despite these expanded opportunities, most people are still waiting for permission. They're waiting for someone to tell them their idea is good enough, their content is ready, their product is polished enough. They're seeking validation from gatekeepers who no longer control the gates. They're asking for approval from institutions that have been disrupted by people who stopped asking for approval. Elon Musk embodies the power of self-authorization in the modern era. When he decided to revolutionize the automotive industry with Tesla, he didn't seek permission from established car manufacturers. When he wanted to make space travel affordable through SpaceX, he didn't wait for NASA's approval. When he envisioned transforming transportation through Hyperloop technology, he didn't ask permission from transportation authorities. He gave himself permission to compete with entire industries, to challenge established players who had decades more experience, to pursue goals that most experts considered impossible. His willingness to act without permission has created multiple billion-dollar companies and advanced human civilization in measurable ways. The permission-seeking mindset is particularly damaging because it trains you to look outward for validation instead of inward for direction. It teaches you to value other people's opinions more than your own intuition. It conditions you to seek safety in consensus rather than strength in conviction. But wealth creation, real wealth creation, requires the opposite orientation. It demands that you trust your own vision more than conventional wisdom, that you value opportunity more than security, that you pursue significance even when it conflicts with approval. This doesn't mean ignoring all advice or feedback. Successful entrepreneurs are voracious learners who constantly seek information, insights, and perspectives from others. But there's a crucial difference between gathering intelligence and seeking permission. When you gather intelligence, you're collecting data to inform your decisions. When you seek permission, you're asking others to make your decisions for you. One enhances your judgment, the other replaces it. Reed Hastings demonstrated this distinction when he transformed Netflix from a DVD by mail service to a streaming platform. He didn't ask customers for permission to eliminate the service they loved. He didn't seek approval from entertainment industry executives who were skeptical about streaming technology. He didn't wait for Wall Street analysts to validate his strategy. He gathered intelligence about changing consumer preferences and technological capabilities, then gave himself permission to bet the entire company on a vision that many considered risky. His willingness to act without permission despite widespread criticism created the dominant force in global entertainment. The most successful people learned to treat permission seeking as a form of procrastination. They recognize that asking for approval is often just another way of avoiding the responsibility that comes with taking action. They understand that consensus is the enemy of innovation, that committee decisions tend toward mediocrity, that breakthrough results require someone to break through the barriers of conventional thinking. This is why entrepreneurship is fundamentally an act of rebellion, not angry or destructive rebellion, but the quiet rebellion of someone who refuses to let other people's limitations become their own limitations. Every successful business represents someone's refusal to accept the status quo, someone's decision to stop asking why and start asking why not, someone's courage to act without permission and let results speak for themselves. The businesses that change the world are almost never the ones that sought permission before launching. They're the ones that launched first and sought forgiveness later, if they needed to seek forgiveness at all. They're built by people who understood that asking for permission is often just another form of asking for limitation, that seeking approval frequently means accepting mediocrity, that waiting for the perfect moment usually means waiting forever. Your time is now because opportunity doesn't wait for permission. Markets don't pause while you seek approval. Customers don't stop needing solutions while you build consensus around your ideas. The world moves forward with or without your participation, and if you're not moving with it, you're falling behind it. This moment, right now, as you're absorbing these words, is your permission slip, not because someone else is giving you permission, but because you're finally giving it to yourself. You're recognizing that the only approval you need is your own, that the only validation that matters is what you create through action, that the only permission required to pursue greatness is the permission you grant yourself. Stop waiting for ideal conditions. They don't exist. Stop seeking approval from people who haven't achieved what you want to achieve. Stop postponing your dreams until someone else tells you they're worthy of pursuit. Give yourself permission to start where you are, with what you have, toward the vision that calls to you most powerfully. Your time is now because every successful person's time was now when they decided to stop asking and start acting. Your time is now because the world needs what you have to offer, whether it realizes it yet or not. Your time is now because permission is not granted. It's taken by those brave enough to act without it. The prison of permission has no locks except the ones you've imagined. The door has been open all along. The only question is whether you'll finally walk through it and claim the extraordinary life that's been waiting for you on the other side.